This is session 0. It's actually session 1, I lie, of a new campaign titled Mad Magnus Monroe. I informed everyone of the current events of the world, which I'll touch on soon. Each of these players are asked to write about the main villain, Magnus Monroe, and include in the backstory how he has aggrieved their character. This event in each character's history was life-changing. Each player took the theme and ran with it. Everyone did an amazing job with their backstories. I got like 3 pages from each player. And I awarded everyone an inspiration to start off the game. Inspiration, Matt, he's our newest player, is you get 1 extra d20 to roll whenever you choose. And that's where you mark it down, is that inspiration box. You got it already.
I have a question. Do you have to...
You already have a question. I haven't gotten through the introduction.
He's preambling.
I always have questions.
All right.
So when you spend your inspiration die, do you have to choose before you roll, or can you choose after you see your first roll? Like if I roll a 1, can I be like, oh fuck, it's inspiration time?
After you.
Nice. All right,
It's inspiration. It's inspiration.
So all of us are halfling ones, I guess.
I don't actually know, but I'm ruling that right now. Character names, race, classes, an abbreviated version of how Magnus Monroe harmed your character. Let's start with you.
Okay, my character's name is Delrin Cooper. He's a fallen Aasimar, paladin, first level. So Delrin grew up in a small town. He was a Cooper, just like his parents, but he was never really super good at it. He always dreamed...
Cooper is?
Oh, Cooper is a barrel maker.
Thank you.
Yeah, his family is a family of Coopers. It's the family business. And so he never really fit in. His father's best friend was also a paladin and would come by with his kids and hang out. And he would hear this guy's stories, and he really wanted to go do what this dude was doing, be an adventurer and save the world. And so he left when a resistance sprang up against Mad Magnus to go be part of it. But he saw really horrible things that Magnus was doing. Like, he saw one town that they were all put to the stake in a field. The second town, Magnus's soldiers locked them in their houses and burned them down around him. And it really changed the way that he saw the world. So he started being more brutal and more violent, eventually leaving his war with a bunch of other paladins and striking out on his own. And in the process, they became known as the Unfaithful. They ended up at this place called the Battle of Badness, I think, where he was trying to cut off the supply chain from Magnus. And the problem was that Magnus, knowing that he was facing a lot of paladins, had fortified his supply chain with slaves that were innocent in order to keep them from being hit by the paladin's forces. But Delrin took the extra step, killed all the slaves, slaughtered them, strung them up in a tree, and left them for the scouts to find when the supplies didn't make it, because he realized that fear is a weapon. He learned that from Magnus's approach to things. When the scouts came, they slaughtered all the scouts except for one, and drew a company of Magnus's towards them. All of the other unfaithful that he knows about, at least, died there that day, he thinks. And he lived, and now he's at a temple of Pelor. That's pretty much it, I think.
Not quite abbreviated version, but we'll take it.
All right.
I know how to do abbreviated.
So name, class, race, abbreviated.
So Zadkiel Everlight is a tiefling who chose the virtue named Merit. He's an acolyte of Pelor, a priest, and is becoming a divine soul sorcerer, though he thinks he's becoming a cleric. We'll get to that point later. He was actually born as a result of a devil who possessed a member of a town, and a cleric of Pelor came in, cleaned up afterwards. He was the only one of the few survivors of the town. So he was born there, think kind of Hellboy-ish. So born of a devil, but adopted at birth by a cleric of Pelor.
That was much more abbreviated.
I almost...
Sorry.
You heard, like, I almost went into the story and then had to keep bringing it back in.
I couldn't help myself.
All right, Alex.
Name is Artigan Hostigan. Level 1 bard, human. My father was a blacksmith. I grew up in a small town. Essentially, my bride-to-be was killed by Magnus and brought back to his side as a undead. So I'm going to place where I could find a cleric that would be able to resurrect her after I am on my mission to kill Magnus. So
Nice. Name, race,
Okay,
class.
You got it. Girvan Ether, level 1 Ranger Wood Elf. Girvan was living semi-peacefully in the Sakali Forest as a hunter until one fateful night when Girvan's forces decided to pillage and Magnus, decided to just pillage and start to enslave some of the people, took them away. Girvan was one of the only remaining survivors, and now he's just kind of looking for what to do next.
Cool. And then why does he come to the town?
Oh, he, during his travels, he was without food, water for a while, so he started hallucinating, having some visions, and told him to come to this temple place.
There you go. I got a couple homebrew rules I'm going to go over. I'm trying to run this as close to the book as possible. I'm always willing to go back on a decision I make during the game at a later time, reevaluate if I interpreted it wrong, especially if you point it out to me, because otherwise I won't know. It's like the inspiration thing. I'm not really sure, but I'm just going to rule it that you can roll it after the fact. I think everyone here, we have a pretty good cooperative game. We like to play the rules correctly, and there shouldn't be any problems in that regard. And the homebrew rules that we're going to be using is a resurrection homebrew rule. It's slightly modified of Matthew Mercer's homebrew rules. The only difference in the rules is rapid revival. You get your proficiency bonus plus your spellcasting bonus plus 10, I believe. And if you achieve a result greater than the spell level plus 10, is that how it goes?
I do not.
We have it written down. We'll go over that later.
Is it written down in the notes
None
that
of
you
us can
handed
do
out?
it right now, so
None of you can do it right now anyways.
yeah.
So revival, resurrection is not so cut and dry. You can't just keep dying and keep coming back with no consequences. There will be a time, the more you die, the harder it is to bring you back.
I think the difficulty was 10 plus 1 for every time you died.
Yes.
So first it's not bad, but then it gets bad.
It gets worse.
And
And
I
then
think-
regular resurrections are a ritual.
Yep.
And people can participate in them. The better that people do in their participation, maybe they give an offering or an alms of something of that nature, it gets easier to bring the soul back. But if you fail, the soul never returns. So death is a real thing. Bummer. And then the second homebrew rule that I've used is everyone got a feat to start. I think we got some pretty good feats. What did you take?
Shieldmaster.
Shieldmaster.
I took the Tiefling background Infernal Constitution, which gives
From
me
Xanathar's.
extra resistances.
I'm human, so I actually picked 2 feats for the Warcaster and Mage Slayer.
And you took
Sharpshooter.
Sharpshooter. We got a pretty good variety in there. Feats at character creation allow for a little different of a build, so that is that. I'm going to do a reading of the history of the world. It's going to be a little long-winded, so bear with me, and once we get done with that, we will start. All right. A long, long time ago. Oh, and you all have if you want to read along, I don't know if you guys are all visual. If you want to read along, you have it in your binders.
Read along out loud with you? Like a
If
chorus?
You know, maybe just turn to that page in case I start losing my voice, and that way you can take over for me.
Okay.
I'll probably be fine. A long, long time ago, the world of Lothrun suffered one of the worst recorded wars in its history. This war, the Tyranny of Dragons, spanned multiple centuries across the continent of Erishen. It was a war between the dragonborn race that unintentionally involved all creatures in Lothrun. Blood spilled into every settlement, innocent people died by the thousands, and cities and kingdoms were transformed into graveyards. One side fought for the god Bahamut, a powerful draconic deity that values wisdom and knowledge. Those that fought for and with the Dragonborn soldiers of Bahamut believed in justice, mercy, and the good of the world's inhabitants. The other side fought for Bahamut's greatest opposition, his sister Tiamat. Tiamat, the draconic goddess, was worshipped and revered by Dragonborn. They revered strength and self-indulgence. Creatures of evil flocked from every recess of the lands to join in the chaos that ensued to have their chance to spill blood. The Tyranny of Dragons is said to be a true battle of good versus evil. It almost destroyed the world. It was said that the war would never end as long as there were Dragonborn to fight. Nobody is sure who started the atrocities that suffered the world of Lothrun following the war. There are those that blame the humans and elves that bordered the Dragonborn kingdoms. Some blame the orc raiders who plagued the shores of the eastern kingdoms of Erishen. Others even blame the Dragonborns themselves, saying they started the practice of selling their own kind into slavery. No matter the truth of it, this cruel and hateful practice extended almost solely to Dragonborn, and it lasted for over 500 years. The world looked down on their kind, calling them beasts, dragonkin, and even monsters. 79 years ago brought about much-needed change to these terrible times. This was the year that the Council of 13 was formed. The council gathered the greatest kings, lords, leaders, priests, and magi from every corner of Lothrun. All races from every continent was allowed representation. The council wrote and enacted many alliances and treaties made to prevent the destruction of their world. Within 5 years, the council ruled for the abolition of slavery in all allied kingdoms and lands. This is celebrated as one of the greatest acts in Lothrun's history. This hope and change was short-lived. Magnus Monroe was young when he joined the Council of 13 at 22 years of age, yet his wisdom and intellect were beyond his years. Those that remember him when he first joined have mentioned that he was a young tactical genius. This Dragonborn prodigy quickly rose to a position of prominence within the council, and his words held sway among the members of the council and kingdoms of Lothrun. He continued this tenure for 20 years, forming alliances with leaders from all nations. 15 years ago, Magnus Monroe openly rebelled against the Council of 13 during a tribunal. In his defiance, Magnus destroyed the council and murdered the leader, Kona Thule, along with most of the other council members. He amassed an army of Dragonborn and set out on a mission to destroy the world of Lothrun. Page 2. Erishen is the largest continent of Lothrun. These lands are hosted primarily by elf, man, and in the east beyond the Wailing Wall, Dragonborn. West of the wall sprawls wild and untamed ancient forests. Forests which are so thick and abundant that they suffocate everything they run through. The mountains of the land are stunted and worn, old stumps that might have one day been great. These mountains divide the heart of the continent into 3 distinct regions. In the north, Rurigzela hosts inhospitable tundra. The hardiest of creatures live and thrive in these lands. Southwest of the mountains is the Duranda region, vast forests connected by rivers and spotted with swamps. East of the mountains is the Vanmire region. City-states dot the lands up and down the rivers in this region all the way down to the Emerald Coast. The year is 1521 AS, the 13th day of Jarmek, on the day of Thar. This is the first month of the year and the coldest in the northern lands. Every kingdom is on edge, if not already at war. Hospitalities grow scarcer with each day that passes. The inns and taverns a traveler would find on the pass between settlements are abandoned or pillaged. Those that would flee the rural lands for safety and civilization find little welcome in the crowded city streets, and travelers are treated with disregard. Most are unable to afford the taxes required to stay within the city walls, whose winter stores are rapidly depleting. The world is a dangerous place, and each wintry hour of Glim, the season of snow and ice, reminds everyone of this cold, hard truth. Just a couple more paragraphs. Our story starts in the city of Oakdale. a city built over 1,000 years ago. Religious pilgrims who were persecuted for their faith came to this land and erected a tower to the gods. This tower stands over 600 feet high at the top of the steeple. It can be seen from miles away. People of every nation and religion flock to the town to practice their faiths without fear. 800 years ago, a devastating war destroyed the entire city, all except the Tower of the Gods. In the past 200 years, there are those that have taken residence here and made it their home. The current state of Oakdale today follows the long-held traditions of religious freedom. Almost every faith is practiced in Oakdale as long as their actions don't directly interfere with the city's laws and ordinances. 4 wandering destinies cross paths and intertwine at one of these temples, the Citadel of the Sun. This citadel is where High Priestess Gloriosa Everlight has practiced her faith for 15 years. Inside these walls and halls, you will hear the talk of healing, redemption, and light. Inside these halls, you'll find welcome at all hours of the day. And that is my introduction. I'm going to take a drink.
Well done.
When's
Any
the last time
questions?
you talked that much?
That's a lot of talking. Questions? No questions? All right, good. I wasn't going to give you any anyways.